Imagine a bulldozer rolling up to your lake cabin at sunrise. Ready to crush your life over HOA fees, when you ain't even in the HOA. What would you do? The mist over the water that morning was my kind of quiet, soft and gray. Hanging low, like a wool blanket, somebody shook out over the lake. I was 68. And those little routines, you know, they keep a man steady. I ground the good beans, poured the coffee slow, stepped out onto the dock in my slippers. The boards were damp, the pilings creaked, and the only sound was the lake saying hush to the shore. My wife, Sarah, God rest her, helped me build the cabin behind me with these two hands. Every nail, every plank. 30 years of us are soaked into that wood. We raised walls and memories. And out at the end of this dock, we added a small boathouse with a roof she insisted should catch the morning sun. It did. Better than any picture. That's when I saw it. A slap of bright orange tacked to the boathouse door. It looked mad. Like it had no business being that loud in the gray. I walked over, slow. Palm already tightening. It wasn't taped. It was nailed. A single thick nail shot right through the paint. Sarah and I brushed on a decade back. That felt wrong. Like someone walked in with muddy boots and put them up on your kitchen table. I pried the nail out with my fingers. Left a little ugly hole. And read. Lakeside Pines Homeowners Association. First, red flag. I am not, let me say this plain, not a member of Lakeside Pines or any association. My boundary ends a good half-mile shy of their manicured kingdom. My grandfather bought this land clean. The deed in my file cabinet backs that up. Below the header, big tough letters, final notice, unpaid HOA dues, demolition scheduled. It listed the amount due as $11,740.26. Real official. Real specific. A dozen violations. 2 unapproved, citing color. Non-compliant dock maintenance. The same dock I replanked last summer. Then, the kicker at the bottom deadline, 3 days. 3 days, or they'd tear down my boathouse. Maybe the cabin next. I didn't go straight to mad. I went to confused. Must be a clerical mix-up, I thought. Some office drone clicked the wrong pin on a map. Happens. Inside. I set the coffee down and dialed the HOA number printed on the notice. A woman answered on the second ring. Voice smooth and sugary, like she sells candles that cost too much. Lakeside Pines. This is Karen. How can I help you, ma'am? I said. Polite as church. There's been a mistake. I found a notice nailed to my boathouse. I'm not in your HOA. A little sympathetic click of her tongue. Oh. Mr. Weller. I see your file right here. Looks like you're quite behind on dues. There are no dues, I said, keeping my temper sheathed. County plat shows my parcel outside your association. Well, Karen sighed, fake patience. Like talking to a child. Our records show your parcel was annexed 6 weeks ago. After a community vote. I'm sure you received the paperwork. Don't you worry. She purred. I'll flag it as a possible clerical mix-up. I'll make sure it's all fixed before any crew is scheduled to arrive. Her words were oil on water pretty. But they didn't sink in. Community vote. Annexed. Scripted. Slick. Still. She said it'd be fixed. I decided to believe in the system for what? 24 hours. Next morning, no mist. Hard sun. Bright as a dare. I'm mid-coffee when I hear the low growl of an engine and gravel crunching out front. Not a neighbor's pickup. Heavier. I look out, and my gut drops. A dual-axle flatbed squats at the top of my drive, with a yellow backhoe riding piggyback hydraulic arm tucked like some sleeping praying mantis. A man in a reflective vest climbs down. Big and tired in the shoulders. Clipboard in his fist. He walks up without smiling. Men like that don't waste smiles. "Can I help you?" I ask. Steady as I can. "You Tom Weller?" He grunts. "I am. I'm Ted. Foreman, with Kruger Demolition. Got a work order to take down that boathouse," he says, tapping the clipboard. "And if the site isn't cleared, we start on the main cabin. Says here we either get a certified check for $12,000 or we start tearing." I stared. The sugary voice on the phone was a lie. And the proof was 10 tons of diesel-breathing teeth parked in my driveway. "Let me make a call," I said. "Because arguing with a wrench ain't how you fix the tractor. He's a tool. You talk to whoever's turning the nut." Inside, I locked the door. My hand shook. Just a tad. I didn't call Karen. I called my oldest. Dana picked up on the first ring. "Dad, you okay?" I explained the orange notice. The call. The backhoe. She listened in that crisp way she has. Then her voice shifted into something granite. "Special Agent Granite. Dad, listen carefully," she said. Clipped and precise. "Do not go back outside. Do not talk to the foreman. Go window to window and photograph everything: the truck, the backhoe, plates, and any crew faces. Then get your deed, last tax bill, and the survey from when you built the boathouse. Photograph every single page. Timestamp on. Email me. Then drive to the county clerk. Ask for a certified copy of the current official plat for your parcel. Not just a look. Certified copy. Pay the fee. That's your shield. I'll call you back. I love you. Go." We hung up. Fear got shoved off the driver's seat. I had a checklist now. "Retired electrician here. Give me a procedure and I'll run it." I documented. Kitchen window. Living room. Upstairs snap. Snap. Plates crystal clear. Ted leaning on the truck. Cigarette. Hanging on for dear life. Click. Then, to the metal file cabinet, the old deed from my granddad. The deed that put it in my name. Blueprints for the cabin. The county survey from 3 decades ago with a line that says, "You end here." HOA starts there hundreds of yards away. Every page photographed. Every image stamped. Then I went to the county building: old brick, floor wax, and paper dust. The clerk looked weary but kind. "Parcel 75, B1. I said, reading off the tax bill. She spun the screen toward me. The lake. My square. A thick boundary line. And my land, blessedly. Obviously outside the lakeside pines line. Certified copy. I said, stamp heavy and permanent, thumped the page. Embossed seal in the corner. Evidence. Not opinion. I drove back with that map-riding shotgun like a trophy. Dana called as I turned down the old gravel. "Okay, Dad," she said. Voice grim. "This isn't a mistake. It's a target." "What do you mean?" I ran background on the HOA president, Karen Prescott. Not her first rodeo. Past 5 years. She filed altered property maps in 2 other counties. Finds water access land adjacent to an HOA she controls. Then a slightly updated map appears. Boundary nudged. 6 weeks ago. A new map got filed here. That community vote she mentioned, she allegedly manufactured it. My fingers tightened on the wheel. The sugar on the phone tasted like poison now. I pulled into the drive. The demolition truck was gone. For a second, I dared hope. Then I saw him collared shirt. Lakeside Pines logo. On the road, half hidden by a tree. Telephoto lens pointed right into my living room. Taking evidence. Documenting violations. They weren't done. They were just getting crafty. By the time the first black sedan slid into the drive, the photographer had vanished. I knew Dana's posture before she even stepped out, purpose in motion. Not my little girl. A federal agent arriving on scene. She hugged me quick. Eyes scanning the tree line like a human periscope. You did good, she said. The photos are perfect. 2 more cars followed. My boys. Ray got out first. Homeland Security carved his shoulders and taught him to move quiet. He nodded once. Eyes already marking angles and exits. Mark arrived buzzy and sharp. A postal inspector who never met a scheme he couldn't unwind. He squeezed my shoulder. Don't worry, Dad, he said, putting a little grin on. Mail fraud. Wire fraud. This Karen person stepping in it big time. We turned my oak kitchen table into a command center. Dana put my certified plat in the center like bedrock. Beside it, she laid the updated map the county had on digital file from 6 weeks back. At first glance, twins. Then Mark set a ruler across both. On Karen's file, the HOA boundary curled north. A neat little 200 feet. And what a miracle, swallowed my whole shore. She didn't just move a line. Ray rumbled. She stole land on paper. Mark held up a community vote page 1 sheet, claiming the homeowners voted to annex. Below, a neat list of signatures. He'd already highlighted 3. Frank Miller. He read. Died in 2018. Joan Peterson stroke in 2020. Carl Beasley moved to Florida a decade ago. He looked at me. Dad. This is allegedly a forged ballot. It landed like a stone in my chest. Frank helped me raise my cabin roof. Joan brought Sarah flowers. Using their names, that's a special kind of mean. The mailbox clacked metal, rattling like a dare. I opened the door. A crisp white envelope with the HOA logo. No stamp. Hand delivered. The bill inside second notice. FINA doubled. The original total, nearly $12,000, crossed out. New total, $23,480.52. They'd tacked on exterior paint code, non-compliance. $10,000. For the same soft brown I've had for 30 years. It was so brazen, I almost laughed. Not rules. Ransom notes. I laid the letter among the maps and deeds. The room cooled. Not from the AC, from the way my kids went quiet. This, Dana said, tapping the stack, isn't about paint or docs. It's about whether paper bullies get to take a life with printed lies. The next dawn, they changed tactics. 5:30, still dark. Something crashed against metal so loud, it yanked me out of sleep. Taillights disappearing at the top of the drive. At the bottom, a giant dumpster. 30 yards long. Planted like a dead whale across my exit. A spray-painted tag on the side property of Lakeside Pines. HOA debris removal. They'd caged me in. Ambulance couldn't get through. Fire truck neither. And they called my life debris. I didn't panic. The shock hardened into something cold and methodical. Ray folded his arms at the window. They want you boxed. Dad, he said. Voice flat. Helpless. I showed Mark my system plain as a tool belt. Notes app. Write the date. Time. What happened? 5:32 a. Ember Day. Dumpster dropped, blocking driveway. Then, photos, positions, plates. The lot. Timestamps on. Good. Mark said. A spark of pride. He lifted the hand-delivered notice. Tapped the signature. Greg Purcell. Treasurer. Let's see what Mr. Purcell thinks about debris. He called on speaker. All, aw shucks politeness. The voice that answered sounded like a man who loves a clipboard more than a sunset. We're just confused. Mark said. My dad's an old man. We don't want trouble. We're thinking he should just sell and move. Silence. The hook said. Greg chuckled. Sour and pleased. Now that's the smartest thing I heard all day. We'll make it so he wants to sell. Cheaper in the long run. Mark's eyes met mine. Admission. Harassment to force a sale. Dana typed while we spoke. Jav said. That's extortion. She murmured. Combined with fraudulent filings, mail and wire. Mark added. Federal. We didn't jump straight to handcuffs. We did it right. Dana drafted a cease and desist, clean, hold, and iron. Illegal blockade. Fraudulent documents. Fines without jurisdiction. Recorded admission of harassment. We weren't asking. An hour later, the county sheriff, friend of 20 years, parked at the top of the drive. He couldn't come down. Thanks to the steel whale. He read the letter. Face going from tired to stone. He strode toward Lakeside Pines. A minute later, Karen emerged from her perfect little palace with a neighbor-meeting smile painted on. The sheriff didn't raise his voice. He handed her the letter. Watching her read it, sugar melting off her face. Bare fury flashing was worth more than the 23 grand they claimed. 20 minutes after, the same truck returned to drag the dumpster away. Small win. Sweet as pie. But that night, a neighbor called. Voice tight. Tom. You might want to see the HOA Facebook. I pulled it up. There I was, my cabin. Shot with a telephoto lens. A big, bold caption, public notice of violation and non-compliance. They tagged me by name. My private fight got hauled to the town square and locked in the stocks. They meant to shame me. But shame can backfire. Bill called from 2 roads over. They fined me $500 for a garden gnome. Said it wasn't in harmony with the natural woodland setting. Then Cheryl. Half an inch too wide on my welcome mat. She said. Voice shaking. I thought I was alone. Karen had shown her hand publicly, and folks started recognizing the pattern. Dana didn't stop at angry. She followed the money because money is the root of most HOA nonsense. I mean, most nonsense. Period. She filed a Freedom of Information request with the state office that oversees associations. The language is simple. You act on the public. The public gets to see. She asked for 5 years of budgets, filings, meeting minutes. By law. They had to cough it up. A week later, digital dump. My kitchen table turned into a spreadsheet swamp. Dana read for hours. Pencil tapping. Sticky notes multiplying. I kept the coffee coming. Around 4. She leaned back and let out a slow whistle. Found it. She said. Line item community maintenance, over $500,000 across 5 years. But when she added up actual landscaping, road work, snow removal, it was about half of that. Sitting there, fat and vague, was a recurring expense category, general contracting and site management. Paid out quarterly. No receipts attached. No vendor details. Just a lump. That's a slush fund, Ray said. Dana dug into the state's business registry. Prescott Contracting. The payee of those lumps. Owner David Prescott, Karen's brother. So here's a pattern. Laid out in ink levy. Bogus fines to cover holes created by vague payouts to a family company that no one can explain. In our opinion, it stank like a fish left in the sun. That night, my garage turned into something between a workshop and a town hall. Bill and Cheryl came. Plus a younger dad who'd been cited for the color of his kid's tricycle. We didn't have a crowd. 4 neighbors. But it felt like an army. We spread the evidence on my workbench, the forged-looking map. The vote. Greg's smirking admission. The budget weirdness. You could feel the mood shift from fed up to fired up. We agreed to file a joint complaint with the Attorney General. With the documents in hand, we believed there was enough to ask for the board's removal and the HOA's charter to be placed under a receiver. For the first time in weeks, I could see the road out. The next day was a normal Saturday errand day. I ran to the hardware store for a handful of odds and ends, no project. Just habit. I was gone maybe 2 hours. I heard it before I saw it. A buzzy snarl. Like a giant hornet. Chainsaw. My heart climbed into my throat. I turned onto my road and felt the world tilt. Where my boathouse stood for 3 decades. A jagged pile of splinters and nails crouched on the shore. Ted and his crew were there. Packing up work completed. The roof Sarah and I shingled. The wall she painted to catch the morning sun. That little window she picked because the light made dust look like gold gone. The crew moved like they were late for lunch. Efficient. Brutal. I stumbled out. Ted wouldn't meet my eyes. He tossed a look at his clipboard, waved his guys into the truck, and left like he'd just mowed a lawn. My neighbor Bill hustled down, breathless. Tom, I'm sorry. We called the sheriff the second we heard him. But he swallowed. They worked fast. And Tom, after the crew left, a pickup came. Karen's nephew. He hauled off the good lumber. Said it was salvage. They hadn't only destroyed it. They picked the bones clean. I sat on the edge of the ruined dock. The air smelled like sap and loss. I ran a hand over a broken plank and felt something smooth wedge in a crack. A photo small. Faded must have fallen during the demolition. Sarah and me. Summer, we finished the boathouse. We were so young and sawdust dirty. She held the hammer. Me with an arm around her. Grinning like fools. Something in me just folded. Quiet. Heavy. It wasn't a building anymore. It was a memory they bulldozed. My kids found me there. Dana set a hand on my shoulder. Ray stood like a block of granite. Mark looked at the debris with a fury so cold it didn't need words. They didn't say it's okay. 'Cause it wasn't. After a while, Ray spoke. Voice like gravel in a coffee can. That's it. We stop reacting. We start acting. I looked at each of them. Same fire. They hadn't just messed with some homeowner. They hurt our family. War. Declared. We shifted to offense. Ray led. She can't help herself. He said about Karen. She's a bully who needs to feel in control. She destroyed the boathouse. Now, she'll be watching to make sure you don't rebuild. We'll use that. Step 1, bait. Next morning I bought a dozen 2x4s and a sheet of plywood. Not enough to actually build. Just enough to look like a start. I stacked the wood neatly at the end of the dock. Right where the boathouse used to be. I drew up mock plans in pencil. Nice and official-looking notes in the margins exceeds county code. Reinforced footings. I left the plans on my garage workbench. Easy to spot through the window. A nosy HOA president's catnip. Step 2. The trap. Ray had 4 motion-activated cameras, each the size of a jawbreaker. He tucked one inside the birdhouse, hanging from the oak little lens peeking from the hole. Full view of the dock and lumber. Second, under the garage eave, aimed right at the window with the plans. Third, in the thick hedge along the property line she'd have to cross. Fourth, inside the cabin. Wide shot of the yard. He linked them to a secure recorder and fed the live video to his and Dana's phones. We waited. Day 1, squirrel false alarm. UPS drop. Bill's golden retriever auditioned as a suspect. Nothing. Day 2, silence plays tricks on your nerves. I started to wonder if we'd misread her. Day 3. Late morning. Ray's phone chimed. He turned the screen. Karen Prescott. HOA Queen Bee herself. Walking down my driveway like she owned the county. Clipboard in one hand. Phone in the other. Frame full of indignation. She marched onto my dock. Took pictures of the stacked lumber. Then drifted toward the garage. Eyes locked on the window. We watched her lean in to see the plans. She crossed the boundary line. Trespass. On camera. Dana gave me a small nod. Right then. Tires whispered on gravel. 2 black SUVs. The kind with no hubcaps. Rolled in silent and stopped just so cleanly, blocking her exit. Karen didn't hear them until doors clicked open. She spun around. Face draining, then flushing. All that HOA meeting charm, curdling. 3 folks in dark suits stepped out, no floppy HOA badges. Just competence. Dana came out of the second SUV in jeans and a plain blue jacket. Moving with calm gravity. Karen found her voice and threw it like a plate. What is the meaning of this? This is private property. You're trespassing. Dana didn't posture. She approached until she was close enough for truth to travel without shouting. Dana didn't posture. She came close enough that truth didn't have to shout. Miss Prescott, this is a lawful notice, she said. Calm as a winter lake. As of 8 this morning, there's a temporary restraining order filed in county court. It bars you, your agents, and your contractors from entering Mr. Weller's property, altering improvements, or demanding fines until the court hears the matter. You are currently trespassing. Karen tried the HOA smile again. The one that works on folks who hate conflict. It slid right off, Dana. I don't recognize your authority. She snapped. This is an internal community issue. He's in violation of a board action, under active investigation, Dana said, not raising her voice. She held up a paper. Order. Stamped and signed. You've been served. Please, step off the dock. Karen's eyes cut to the cameras. Then, to my stacked lumber. Then back to Dana, like she was choosing which piece of the world to be mad at first. This lumber is an unapproved structure in process, she declared, jabbing her clipboard. We have every right to stop, Dana said. Just that one syllable. Steady. Step off the dock. You could hear the lake breathe. Karen took a half step back. Chin up. Then another. She tried to regain the stage. We're only enforcing standards. There's people who ignore the bylaws and expect exceptions. There are also boards, Dana said, who allegedly forge votes, file altered maps, and hire family companies with community funds. She didn't say it like a threat. She said it like a weather report you can't argue with. The sheriff's cruiser rolled in then. Blue bar quiet. Tires, whispering. Same friend as before. He climbed out, nodding at me. At Dana. Then turned to Karen. Ma'am, you've been served with a restraining order. You need to leave this property now. Any further contact goes through counsel. Karen looked wounded, like the world had betrayed her by refusing to read from her script. She gathered herself, squared her shoulders, and with that pinched calm, some people weaponize, sneered. Enjoy your little victory. Then she left. Heels stabbing my gravel like punctuation. The SUVs drifted away a beat later. Quiet as they'd come. The dock exhaled. Dana let the tension out of her jaw. You okay? I am now, I said, though my hands weren't quite steady. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, she said. Soft. We've still got to unwind the mess they made. We didn't treat the TRO like a trophy. We treated it like a clock. It bought time until the hearing 2 weeks out. If the court calendar held, 2 weeks to gather everything, organize it clean, and show a judge why this wasn't just a crabby neighbor fight. Mark became a machine. He built a timeline across the kitchen wall, blue painter's tape as a line. Sticky notes like mile markers, first notice nailed to Boathouse. Call with Karen. Demolition crew arrival. County plat obtained. Dumpster blockade. Second notice with doubled fines. Facebook public notice. Destruction of Boathouse. Trespass at dock. TRO served. Each event had photos. Time stamps. Names. He color-coded by act paper threats. Physical intimidation. Public shaming. Property damage. He's my boy. But, watching him turn chaos into a clean story, that was something. Ray handled security. Cameras stayed up. He added a small sign on the dock, private property monitored. Not to provoke. Just to set the line. He swapped my old deadbolt for a smart lock. Left me a key anyway, 'cause I'm old school. He ran me through a drill. If anyone shows, you don't step out. You call me. You call the sheriff. And you film through glass. Got it, I said. And I did. Dana worked the channels you and I don't see. She sent packets to the state's HOA Oversight Office, the Attorney General's Consumer Division, and, quietly, to a federal task force that looks at public corruption and fraud. She didn't promise outcomes. She built a road for them to walk if they chose to. Neighbors. They stopped whispering. Bill and Cheryl began knocking on doors. Turns out shame flips when bullies overplay their hand. One by one. Folks with little fines, garden gnomes. Flags too bright. A wind chime audible from the street. A wreath out of season started to see they weren't the problem. We held a backyard potluck that Sunday. Paper plates and potato salad. Folding chairs and straight talk. No shouting. No pitchforks. Just a circle of people who were tired of living in a neighborhood where the strongest muscle was the index finger pointing at someone else's life. I told them what happened and what we'd found. I kept the words simple. I ain't asking anyone to hate anybody. I said, I'm asking the truth to stand up on its own legs. Cheryl, who never raises her voice, said, they told me my welcome mat was half an inch too wide. I cried over a welcome mat. Her voice broke, and then got stronger. I'm done. A younger dad, Evan, rubbed the back of his neck. They fined me for the color of my kid's tricycle. Said neon plastic doesn't harmonize. I thought it was dumb, but, like, you pay to avoid trouble. Right. I paid. Then, they cited the basketball hoop. They keep you running. Ray said, if you run, they keep chasing. We listed what was legal, what wasn't, and what we didn't know yet. We stuck to what we could prove. We didn't gossip about Karen's personal life. Didn't invent motives. We kept it clean. That mattered to me. Sarah would have made sure of it. I could almost hear her fight hard. But don't let hate rot you from the inside. 2 days later, the HOA scheduled a special meeting. Location, the clubhouse on their side of the line. Agenda, community standards. Budget adjustments. And disciplinary action. Which is HOA for we're gonna crank the screws. People brought folding chairs anyway. The room swelled until it was wall-to-wall breath. Karen sat at the center of the board table, flanked by Greg Purcell, the treasurer, and a secretary whose smile trembled like it wanted to leave. Karen rapped a wooden gavel. Order, she said, like she held a crown. Greg launched into a slide deck. Budget lines. Bar graphs. Lots of numbers that look official until you ask what they're made of. Then came community standards. Photos of lawns, flags, mailboxes, my cabin. The image of my dock and my stacked lumber flashed on a big screen like a wanted poster. Mr. Weller, Karen announced, continues to flout standards. He has threatened legal action instead of working collaboratively. This board will not be intimidated. I stood up. I was an invited outsider on their turf. So I kept my voice even. I am not in your HOA. Murmur through the room like a breeze in dry leaves. Folks had heard. But hearing with me, standing there, pulled the truth into the center. Karen smiled with her teeth. The community voted to annex. She said, crisp. We filed properly. Mark, 2 rows behind me, cleared his throat. Then you won't mind answering some questions. He walked to the front slow. Polite. He asked for the mic. They didn't want to give it. People started to call. Let him speak. Karen handed it over like it was a live wire. Mark didn't speechify. He asked questions a jury would love. When was the annexation vote noticed to homeowners? On which date? By what method? Karen's mouth made a calm shape. The standard notice. Which is Mark pressed. Email. Greg chimed in. Too quick. From what address? Mark asked. The reason I ask is, I pulled the mail server logs that track bulk notices. There's no record for the dates on your minutes. Also, he clicked a small remote. A photo slid onto the screen. A comparison of 2 maps. Your filed map moves the boundary by a few hundred feet. The county's official survey, certified last week, shows the line exactly where it's been for, 3 decades. Who drew the new map? Greg's jaw tightened. A licensed contractor. Name, Mark said. Emailed to you. Greg said. Finding vague, like a life raft. Funny. Mark said. Eyes sweeping the room. Because the digital fingerprint on the PDF belongs to a home computer registered to a Prescott, and the vote sheet. He clicked. A list of signatures appeared. 3 highlighted. Can you explain how you recorded a vote for a man who passed away 7 years ago, and a woman who moved to Florida a decade ago? A hush fell so hard, the air felt heavier. Karen's practiced poise cracked a hair. This is a smear, she said. Voice tight. We're volunteers, doing our best. If the clerk made a typo, there's more than a typo, Dana said from the aisle. She didn't flash a badge. She didn't need to. Her presence rolled off her like gravity. There are funds paid to a company owned by Miss Prescott's brother. No itemized invoices. No request for proposals. No bids. Repeatedly. Heads turn toward Karen like sunflowers swing toward the light. She flushed. Our community is beautiful because we act decisively, she said. You like the plowed roads, the trimmed common areas. That costs money. A voice from the back. Old Mr. Duffy called. I like roads that ain't paved with my grandkids' lunch money. Laughter. Shaky, but brave. Then Cheryl stood, holding a manila folder. I have copies of the notices they posted on Mr. Weller's cabin, she said. They doubled fines when he didn't pay the first false bill. They blocked his driveway with a dumpster. They posted his home address on Facebook as a public notice. That could have brought crazies to his door. Who thinks that's okay? Hands went up. Not to vote with Karen, to vote with their neighbors. It was like a wind shifting over a field. You can't see the air, but you watch everything lean a new way. A man in a maintenance polo. I recognized Ted. The foreman hovered near the door. He looked 10 pounds lighter than last week. He raised a hand. I was hired to demo the boathouse, he said. Voice rough. We had a work order stamped urgent. I didn't ask enough questions. That's on me. But I didn't know the TRO was coming that morning. And I didn't know the plat didn't include him. I should have checked. I'm sorry. Karen cut in. Sharp. Sir. You completed a contracted service. You owe us. No. Ted said, surprising everyone, including himself. I owe him an apology. He looked at me. I'm willing to testify who told us to rush. Karen's gavel found the table like a woodpecker. Order. This is out of order. But order was not hers to summon anymore. A motion came from the floor. Cheryl again. Voice shaking but standing. I move to suspend the current board pending the state investigation. I move we appoint an interim committee of non-board homeowners to cooperate with authorities and hire an independent receiver if necessary. Greg barked. You can't. Point of order. Mr. Duffy creaked with a grin. We just did. Hands rose. Not everyone. Enough that the room felt different after. Karen stood. Gavel in a white-knuckle grip. This meeting is adjourned, she declared, and fled the stage, with Greg scurrying behind. The secretary quietly placed the gavel on the table and walked into the audience, tears trembling, like she'd been waiting to be a neighbor again. That night the air in my cabin felt lighter, and somehow heavier. Lighter because the tide turned. Heavier because tides can drag you if you stop swimming. The week before, the hearing stretched long and taut. The HOA Facebook page went quiet. No more public notices. Mailbox stayed boring for once. But we weren't fooled. Quiet isn't peace when bullies lose their bullhorns. It's plotting. Mark finished the binder for the judge tabs you could navigate in the dark jurisdiction. Annexation. Notice. Map irregularities. Financial conflicts. Harassment. Property damage. Every claim had proof. Riding shotgun photo. Receipt. Affidavit. He prepped me to testify in simple lines. Say what you saw. Say what you did. When in doubt. You don't guess. I don't guess. I said. I fix things or I say I don't know. He smiled. Same here. Dad. The morning of the hearing came gray and humid. Old courthouse. Wooden pews. The particular echo of shoes on stone. The judge was a woman with careful eyes who looked like she'd seen the full catalog of human nonsense and still believed in order. We didn't go first. There was a slip and fall. A traffic ticket. A sad landlord-tenant tug of war. Then Weller v. Lakeside Pines, HOA. Motion for preliminary injunction and other relief. Karen arrived in a navy suit, a shade too crisp, with a lawyer who had the smoothness of river rock. Greg sat 2 rows back. The secretary wasn't anywhere I could see. Our lawyer, a friend of Dana's who knew the HOA statutes like a cookbook, spoke first. He wasn't flashy. He walked the judge through the map, the vote, the notices, the dumpster, the demo. He kept his voice even, like he trusted the facts to carry their own weight. He called me. I told the story from the day I found the orange notice to the morning I sat on splinters. I tried not to do the angry old man thing. I told it plain. Karen's attorney cross-examined soft. Mr. Weller, you dislike HOAs, don't you? I dislike being told to pay folks who don't have the right to ask, I said. He tried to characterize the Boathouse as non-compliant, as though compliance meant whatever a nearby queen declared. Mark's binder swallowed that whole with county permits from back when Sarah and I built it. The judge looked at the paper with a tiny tilt of her head that said you did your homework. Then the lawyer called Karen. She walked up like a woman walking through hail, but determined to pretend it's confetti. She spoke about community standards, protecting property values, consistent enforcement. She used those words like shields. When asked about the vote, she said the board followed procedure. When asked about the map, she said, we relied on a contractor who came recommended. When asked about the payments to her brother's company, she flinched. He gives us a good rate, she said. He cares. Miss Prescott, the judge asked, voice mild but sharp. Why was there no request for bids on those expenditures? Karen's jaw twitched. We needed timely service. Emergencies. And the emergency requiring a dumpster to block Mr. Weller's driveway. What was that? Karen blinked. The lawyer coughed. Your Honor. That was part of debris removal efforts associated with property the HOA does not control. The judge finished, glancing at the certified plat we'd filed, and the public posting of Mr. Weller's address labeled as a violation notice. Karen reached for her script. Transparency. The judge's eyebrows did a tiny shift. I call it doxing, she said. Flat. And it endangered a private citizen. Karen's lawyer tried to steer back to the comfort of bylaws. The judge let him, then held up a palm. This is not a trial, she said. But I've seen enough to prevent further harm. Temporary injunction granted. The HOA is restrained from entering Mr. Weller's property, issuing fines to him, or taking action predicated on the disputed annexation. Additionally, the HOA will remove public postings naming Mr. Weller and will refrain from similar disclosures while this case proceeds. I am appointing an interim receiver to review the HOA's finances and governance and to report back within 60 days. Silence has a sound. It's relief learning how to breathe. You could hear it then. Karen's face went still, then hot. She whispered something to her lawyer that looked like appeal. The judge continued. As to the Boathouse, the question of damages is reserved. But I will note, preliminarily, that demolition without clear jurisdiction and with a contested boundary is troubling. The receiver will evaluate vendor relationships, including any with family ties. Gavel. Not the HOA toy. The real thing. Outside the courthouse, the summer sun came like a benediction. Bill hugged me hard enough to pop 2 ribs. Cheryl cried into my shoulder, laughing while she did. Ray grinned. Dana's hand found mine. Squeezed. Then squeezed again. "I'm proud of you," she said. "You didn't let the anger steer. Had a good pit crew," I said. "Because I ain't too proud to say it." The receiver arrived like a spreadsheet with shoes. Miss Alvarez Small. Precise. With a warmth that didn't get in the way of her math. She set up shop in the HOA office and began pulling threads. Homeowners watched her carry stacks to her car boxes labeled invoices, contracts, minutes. She wasn't there to gossip. She was there to count. Greg resigned for personal reasons within a week. The secretary emailed the neighborhood a single line, "I'm sorry." Karen didn't resign. She posted a statement about witch hunts and outside interference. The comments underneath, once fawning, turned complicated. People asked questions she couldn't answer with slogans. Ted met me at the shore one evening with a 6-pack and a look men wear when they're ready to be honest. "I can't undo what we did," he said. "But I brought the names. Who called? Who pushed? The texts. They said if we didn't move fast, we'd lose future work. That ain't an excuse. It's the truth." I took the envelope. "You came back," I said. "That counts for something." He stared at the water. "You ever do a job and it sits wrong in your bones? This one's been a cinder there since we left." We shook hands like men. Apologies are built for awkward. Ernest. He left lighter. I think. I felt heavier and lighter both. Miss Alvarez's preliminary report landed in the judge's inbox like a thunderhead. We didn't see all of it. But what trickled out through the interim committee painted the shape payments without bids. Emergencies with no work orders. Invoices routed through family. Fines aggressively levied near the lake to offset shortfalls. And this part made my teeth set the language in internal emails. Make an example. Keep pressure on. They weren't protecting values. They were protecting control. The judge set a follow-up hearing for remedies. Karen's lawyer asked for a delay. Denied. He asked to narrow the receiver's scope. Denied. He asked to reconsider the injunction. Denied. You could feel the momentum. Like a boat finally catching the current instead of fighting it. Before the remedies hearing, a letter arrived at my place. This time with a stamp like God intended. From the interim committee. Signed by neighbors. "We're sorry. We believed what we were told. We should have asked more questions sooner." I cried at my kitchen table quiet. The way men my age do when the heart overwhelms the pride. Remedies Day came crisp and blue. The judge read from Miss Alvarez's report. Then looked over her glasses at the room. Associations are created to serve communities, not to become private fiefdoms, she said. When boards forget that, courts will remind them. Orders fell like clean bricks. Independent audit, suspension of fine enforcement pending policy overhaul, restitution fund established for improperly collected fines, community-wide election supervised by the court, and this one sat sweet in my chest. Authorization for my claim for damages related to the Boathouse, to proceed against those responsible. With the receiver to coordinate insurance and contractor liability questions. The court also directed the HOA to issue a public retraction and apology for the online public notice naming me. Karen's face didn't change. Some people don't bend until they break. I didn't need to see that. I needed to go home. Late that afternoon, Bill's truck pulled in with lumber stacked high. Evan brought a trailer full of borrowed tools. Cheryl arrived with sandwiches that could feed an army and a cooler of sweet tea. Someone had posted in the new interim group, Workday, at Tom's. Let's put back what was taken. I stood on the shore where the boathouse had been and felt my throat go tight. Y'all don't have to. We know. Bill said. We want to. We set posts till the sun licked the tree line. Ray measured and cut. Evan's boy, 10. Maybe carried nails, with the solemn pride of a knight ferrying a sword. Cheryl's laugh stitched the evening together. Even Ted showed up in plain clothes. Kept to the edges till I waved him in. He worked like a man paying down a debt he wasn't gonna carry to his grave. We didn't finish. You don't rebuild 3 decades in a day. But when we stepped back at dusk, there was a shape there, new pilings. A frame catching light the way Sarah meant it to. I set the little faded photo of us in a jar on a sawhorse. Like a lighthouse in reverse. Shining memory in. Not out. Night fell soft. Crickets tuned up. Folks drifted home with that good tired that comes from doing something that mattered. I sat on the unfinished dock with my boys and my girl. Feet swinging like we were kids again. You did it, Dad. Dana said. We did it. I corrected. Together. Still gotta finish the roof. Ray mumbled. Half a smile hiding in his beard. Tomorrow, I said. Or the day after. We ain't on Karen time anymore. I slept like the dead. At dawn. Mist rolled in again like the first morning of this whole mess. Soft as a blessing. I poured coffee. Stepped to the edge. Breathed. The jar with the photo caught early light. I swear it glowed. My phone buzzed. Mark. You see the announcement. What announcement? I asked. Bracing. He chuckled. The interim committee posted the new election date. Court supervised. Paper ballots counted in the open. And this part's my favorite. They added a bylaw amendment for the ballot, prohibiting contracts with board members' immediate family without full competitive bids and homeowner approval. Sunshine clause. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd held. About time. I said. Also, he added. Voice warm. The receiver processed interim restitution for the most egregious fines. Cheryl's getting her welcome mat money back. Evan's getting his tricycle fine refunded, plus a formal apology. Little wins. Big message. I hung up and just stood there. Sometimes the best sound in the world is nothing. No diesel growl. No gavel knock. No clipboard clack. Just the lake. Saying hush. Then a car door shut up on the road. Steps. I turn. And there she was, for what I figured might be the last time, Karen. Not marching. Not bristling. Just standing. Hands clasped tight. I didn't invite her down. She didn't ask. We spoke across a fence line made of air and everything that had happened. I came to say. She started. Then stopped. I came to say I'm stepping down. Effective immediately. I nodded. That seems wise. She swallowed. I thought standards were kindness. She said. I thought if I kept everything pretty, people would be grateful. But somewhere She looked tired in a human way I hadn't seen. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't hand it out like candy. I said. And it ain't mine to grant for everyone you hurt. She nodded. Small. I know. She turned to leave. Then paused. Your wife would like the new light on the water, she said. Chin tipping toward the frame we raised. It catches just so. For a second, the old Karen, The neighbor peered out from under the armor. Then, she left. I stood there a while, coffee cooling in my hand. I looked at the jar with our photo and the frame cutting the morning. And I said out loud, to nobody and to Sarah, we're getting there. Slow. But we're getting there. The lake agreed. Election season in a neighborhood shouldn't feel like storm prep. But it did. Not the loud kind, no yard signs screaming at each other, more like folks stacking sandbags of good sense in case the river rose again. The interim committee held listening nights at the clubhouse, no gavel. No stage. Chairs in a circle. Coffee urns hissing. Cookies on a folding table that definitely failed any fancy aesthetics test. People spoke in low voices at first, like they were afraid the walls might fine them for telling the truth. Then, stories spilled the veteran, who got written up for a flag bracket drilled at the wrong angle. The widow who was told her porch light was too warm in tone, and had to replace the bulb twice. The teen, whose skateboard got confiscated from the cul-de-sac for safety, even though he wore a helmet and stayed off the main road. It was like pulling splinters, every little one a hurt, until you finally get it out. I sat and listened. I didn't grandstand. I just nodded and, sometimes, squeezed a hand when words caught in someone's throat. It mattered that I stayed human about it. Anger unaimed becomes a storm that hits your own roof hardest. Miss Alvarez, the receiver, treated the evenings like data collection. She took notes fast, asked straight questions, sorted complaints into buckets process. Transparency, authority, respect. She never once used the phrase, best practice, which made her my kind of accountant. A week before the vote, envelopes arrived, real ones with paper ballots and plain language instructions. The court made sure of that. No fancy portals. No missing links. Clear rules, mark your choices. Sign the outer envelope. Ballots counted in the open on election night by volunteers from blocks that don't share a fence. Old school fairness. The slate for the new board wasn't a revenge list. That felt right. Cheryl agreed to run. She had a spine that looked gentle until you leaned on it and felt the steel. Mr. Duffy said he'd do a term 1 year, he announced. Then I go back to napping on my porch. A school nurse named Aisha put her name in calm. Precise. The kind of person you want around when folks get dramatic about small cuts. Evan raised a hand, too. Cheeks red. Voice steady. I want to help write rules that work for real families. And, kind of quietly, the secretary who'd left the stage during Karen's last gavel night, her name's Lila, accepted a nomination with one condition. No secret votes on anything that costs more than a pizza. Election night felt like a potluck mixed with a church count of Christmas donations. Tables pushed together. Piles of envelopes. 2 kids with clickers. Aisha organized the flow. Open outer. Check signature. Drop inner into the big clear tub. When tub's full, shake. Pull. Read out loud. Nobody shouted. Even the folks who grumbled had to admit it felt clean. When the last ballot got read, the room didn't cheer so much as exhale. Cheryl. Mr. Duffy. Aisha. Evan. And Lila. New board. No fireworks. Just a floor under our feet finally feeling level. Cheryl took the mic and didn't act like a queen. We're neighbors first, she said. We'll make mistakes. We'll own them. We'll keep the books open. We'll ask before we tell. The room didn't erupt. It nodded. Sometimes, nodding is louder. The very first thing they did right there. no waiting was pass. An emergency policy called the Sunshine Clause. In plain speech, no contracts with family members. Bids posted publicly for any job bigger than pocket change. Meeting minutes online within a week. And a homeowner Bill of Rights right on the front page. No public shaming. No private property photos posted without permission. No fines, without a reasonable path to fix a thing first. It fit on one page. Bless them for that. Meanwhile, the other tracks kept running. The state oversight folks poked deeper. The Attorney General's Consumer Division sent a tidy letter requesting additional records and clarifications. Which is bureaucrat, for we noticed what you tried to bury. On the civil side, my claim for the Boathouse moved from "we see you" to "how much" and "from whom." Which, felt strange. Money ain't the same as wood and sunlight. But money builds roofs and pays crews and says wrong in a language bullies hate. Karen kept mostly off stage. A couple of her old guard posted online about witch hunts. But you could feel the wind shift. Folks, tired of drama, just didn't bite. Greg stayed resigned and quiet. Rumor had him lawyering up. I didn't celebrate that. I don't toast a neighbor's fall. I just wanted the harm fixed, and the nonsense stopped. One afternoon, Miss Alvarez asked to walk the shore with me. She carried her clipboard like a shield you don't have to hide behind. You know, she said, there's a pathway here to fix not just the thing that broke, but the way things break. I'm listening, I said. Separate permitting from punishment, she said. Make approvals simple, time limited, and default to yes if no one answers inside a reasonable window. Use warnings with help before fines. And this is key, set a cap on total fines per month so nobody gets buried for missing one email. Feels like common sense, I said. She smiled sideways. Common sense gets rare when folks get scared about values. We drafted language. Aisha sharpened it. Lila made the words friendly. Evan stress-tested it with "what if my kid leaves a scooter on the lawn for 2 days?" Mr. Duffy added a line that made me bark laugh. No regulating porch thermometers. On the legal front, the insurer for the HOA reached out with a settlement offer for my boathouse, enough to buy lumber. And then some. But not enough to pay the crew or the nights lost. My lawyer, nice human with a bulldog heart, said, they're lowballing 'cause they think you're tired. He wasn't wrong. Tired sits in your bones different at my age. Ask for one more thing, I said. What, he asked. Pen hovering. An apology in plain words. Printed and posted. Not a "we regret any inconvenience" thing. A real one. He blinked. Then grinned. You sure? Some folks want dollars? Not words. I want both, I said, and sipped my coffee. Money fixes boards. Words fix people. 2 weeks later, a letter arrived on proper letterhead. I read it 3 times. It said, we were wrong. Not mistakes were made. Not process fell short. It said we were wrong to claim authority we did not have, and we are sorry for the harm caused. It named the boathouse. It acknowledged the dumpster. It said my name like I was a person. Not a case. I kept it. Not 'cause I needed a trophy. Because truth in ink feels like a wall stud you can hang weight on. The money part settled soon after, enough to rebuild right. With a cushion for the time I'd lost and the mess I'd clean. The part about who exactly paid what would be chewed over by lawyers and insurers and, maybe, someday a jury, if any criminal threads got tugged far enough. That wasn't mine to steer. Mine was wood and water, and the memory of Sarah laughing when a board went crooked and we had to start again. We set a date for a community build, like a barn raising. Bill said, eyes bright. Weather forecast looked friendly. So we circled a Saturday in early fall. The leaves had just started to think about changing. The air held that soft edge where you know sweaters ain't far off. Early that morning, trucks nosed down the drive like geese in formation. Ladders, saws, boxes of screws. Someone brought a chalk line like it was a Stradivarius. Another guy showed off a nail gun like a proud granddad with baby photos. Aisha set up a first aid table with band-aids and a stern look that said no heroics. Lila stuck a clipboard on a post. Write your name if you lift a hammer. We'll print it small on a plaque later. I swallowed hard at that. We framed by noon. Rafters by mid-afternoon. The sun found the new angles and made them sing. Even the lake seemed to nod. Little ripples slapping the shore like polite applause. Evan's boy and a pack of kids, emboldened by his bravery, painted the first coat on the little window trim piece Sarah had loved. Careful tongues peeking out in concentration. Cheryl organized lunch like a general, pointing with a sandwich in one hand and a spatula in the other. Ted, quiet all day, moved where the heavy needed moving, took the mean cuts nobody else wanted, and barely looked up when I put a hand on his shoulder. You doing okay? I asked. He cleared his throat. Better than the day I drove away. We finished the skin of it at dusk walls. Roof deck. Paper down. Tarps ready for any surprise. It wasn't done, but it was a boathouse again. Not a wound. After the tools got quiet, folks stood around and told the kind of jokes you tell when you're happy, tired, small. Easy. With laughter that doesn't have to prove anything. The jar with the photo sat on a shelf inside, catching the last light. I swear Sarah winked. But okay, that might have been me being a sentimental old coot. The next morning, the lake wore a silver scarf and the sky thought about rain. I was out early, making sure tarps were snug, when I heard gravel. A small sedan. Not a board member. A woman I didn't know climbed out mid-30s. Maybe. With a past-due kind of worry in her shoulders. She walked down slow, hands ringing an envelope. Mr. Weller, she asked. That's me. She took a breath. My name's Nora. My mom lives 3 streets over Conifer Loop. She's on a fixed income. She's been scared of the board for years. They fined her for feeding a stray cat, said it attracts wildlife. Small laugh that wasn't funny. Anyway, she asked me to bring you this. She held the envelope like it weighed more than paper. Inside was a handwritten note. Thank you. It said, in tidy script, I can't lift a hammer, but I'll bake a pie. There were 2 20s tucked with it. I felt my throat tighten. Tell your mama her pie can buy the whole crew dessert twice, I said. And Nora smiled like a knot came loose. That afternoon, the new board held its first official meeting on folding chairs under a pop-up tent. They voted to refund a list of fines Miss Alvarez had flagged as improper, including Nora's mama's wildlife infraction. They scheduled a Fix-It Fair day, when volunteers would help neighbors bring small out-of-compliance things into shape for free. They created a mediation panel, 2 homeowners, and 1 outside volunteer to talk through disputes before anybody wrote a ticket. And best line of the night, they passed a motion that any board member who publicly shames a homeowner by name online is immediately suspended pending review. Lila capped it with, "We talk to people directly before we talk about them broadly." You could feel a culture cracking open to let some light in. A week later, a letter with a state seal landed a notice of findings. Dry language. But you could hear the point: irregularities identified, corrective actions ordered, referrals made where warranted. I didn't dance. I sat on the dock and said a quiet thank you to the stubborn little thing inside humans that still, sometimes, wants to be decent. Then, 'cause life loves timing, the rain finally came. Not a storm, just a steady, stubborn drizzle that lasted 3 days. The tarps held. The lumber swelled its little bit, like wood does. The lake turned pewter. The boathouse skeleton turned deeper brown. Good weather to rest after weeks of sprinting. On the last rainy night, I dreamed I was back in the old days, standing on the first boathouse frame with Sarah, hammer in her hand, a streak of sawdust right across her nose. She laughed and said, "You always set your nails funny." And I said, "You always boss me." And then we kissed and almost fell. I woke up with a stupid grin and a wet face. Ain't ashamed. When the sun came back, we finished the roof in 1 day flat. Shingles laid like fish scales. Neat and satisfying. A ridge vent that would make any inspector nod. Trim painted that soft eggshell Sarah picked the first time around. Inside, we hung a little sign where the light hits in the afternoon. For Sarah, who said light matters. Underneath, real small, all the names from Lila's clipboard, etched together like a chorus. A few evenings after, with the lake calm and the new woods still smelling like hope, the board held a reset gathering at the clubhouse. No finest talk. No bylaws, just lemonade, cookies, and a little microphone. Folks shared what they wanted, less of anonymous notes, surprise drive-bys, and what they wanted more of: block barbecues, shared tools, borrowed ladders, somebody's teen mowing lawns for seniors at a neighborly rate. Aisha said something simple: "I keep on a sticky note by the sink. Now we're not here to win against each other. We're here to live near each other." Karen didn't show. Her house looked dim most nights. I won't lie, I checked sometimes. Then felt dumb. Then checked again. One Saturday, a moving truck idled out front. She left without a wave. I stood in my mailbox with the little flag up and said nothing out loud. In my head, I wished her something gentle, the kind of reset that doesn't include a gavel. By late fall, the leaves let go. The boathouse held tight. On the first truly cold night, the lake went so still, it looked like thought. I brewed cocoa instead of coffee and sat with my kids, who are not kids, telling the story from the start for the first time, without my voice catching. Dana listened like she did at the beginning, sharp, soft. Ray made sure my back cushion was just right, and grunted when I folded pride and decided to keep it. Mark fact-checked my memory, because of course he did. And we laughed. You know. Dad, Mark said, we could have lost. Yeah. I said, we could have. You didn't. Dana said, you asked for help. You took notes. You let truth do the heavy lifting. Ray raised his mug. To neighbors. I raised mine. To light. If that's too corny for you, I get it. But I'm old. And I earned my right to corny the long way. Winter tucked the lake in, and January blew its breath across the surface until the edges crusted up with ice. HOA business stayed boring in the best way, budgets balanced. Notices written like humans talking to humans. Complaints handled in daylight. Miss Alvarez wrapped her work with a neat bow. Final report filed. Recommendations adopted. Oversight dialed down, as the new board proved they could steer without flipping the boat. In late winter, a letter arrived from the court with a single line that felt like a curtain closing. Matter concluded as to preliminary relief. Ongoing compliance to be monitored by the receiver for 1 year. Translation: play nice. Keep books clean. Call if trouble returns. I slid the letter into the folder with the other's orange notice. Certified plat. TRO. Apology. Settlement. Election results. Life's paperwork of pain and repair. Then I shut the drawer and went for a walk down to the dock, where the light still caught just so on a little square of trim. I touched the sign for Sarah. It was warm, even in the cold. There's a tendency ours, as people, to look at a mess like this and think the solution's always a sledgehammer. But most of what saved us wasn't smashing. It was steady work with a level and a pencil, and a group who learned to ask before they told. It was a judge who cared about lines on a map, a neighbor who cooked for a crowd, a foreman who came back to own his part, a receiver who counted every dollar without forgetting it belongs to humans. And, yeah, it was me being too stubborn to sell and run. I ain't special. I'm just a man who loves a little plank of shoreline and a woman's memory shining on it. Come spring, ducks made a slow parade past the dock like they were inspecting our labor. A kid from 3 streets over caught a bluegill and shouted like he'd won a medal. Aisha waved from a canoe, life vest on, setting an example nobody minded following. Cheryl biked past with a basket full of mailers, garage sale day. Finally back without someone measuring the height of helium balloons. I stood there and felt this simple truth settle: home is not a spotless brochure. Home is the sound of people fixing what they broke or what broke on their watch and deciding, gentle and firm, not to break it that way again. One evening in early spring, I found a small envelope on my porch. No stamp. Just a tidy script I recognized from the apology letter. Inside was a single photo taken from across the lake at sunset. The boathouse roofline cut a clean triangle out of pink sky. On the back, it does catch the light, just so. No signature. Didn't need one. I set it next to Sarah's old snapshot. Old light and new light. Side by side. Both true. We were okay. What if the HOA that tore down your boathouse tried to rewrite your past again, this time in court? With you as the villain? Yeah. That happened. Kinda. A thick envelope showed up one gray Tuesday. Slid under my door like a snake. Inside, a civil complaint with my name bolded, claiming I defamed the former board, interfered with contracts, and incited rebellion. I let a laugh out. That wasn't polite. I mean rebellion. Me, I take my coffee black and my naps regular. My lawyer read it, then chuckled low. They're throwing spaghetti to see what sticks, he said. We'll answer. We'll file an anti-SLAPP motion. He said the letters slow so I'd catch 'em. It's a law that lets folks shut down lawsuits meant to scare 'em silent. We'll argue your speech was in the public interest. Truth is a shield, and we've got binders of it. I nodded. But I ain't gonna pretend my stomach didn't fold up. Being named on paper again does something to a man's sleep. That night I walked the dock with a flashlight beam, drawing a white ribbon on the planks, and asked Sarah's little sign for patience. The new board rallied without turning it into theater. Cheryl called a quick meeting under the pop-up by the clubhouse. We don't fight people, she said. We fight bad habits. Aisha added. We defend neighbors who speak up. Period. Evan proposed a modest legal defense fund for homeowners. Dragged into this kind of nonsense, strictly opt-in. Strictly cat. Lila wrote the words, plain, no lawsuits, as scarecrows. Mr. Duffy passed a coffee can like church. And folks tossed in a few bills each. The way you do when you believe the hat will circle back for somebody else someday. Maybe you. While the countersuit simmered, life kept happening. Miss Alvarez finished her audit and turned the books over tidy as a folded shirt. The receiver's last town hall was almost cheerful. She pointed at charts that weren't scary. Fines were down to nearly nothing. And community project spending, fix-it fair. Shared tool shed. A little grant to help a widow repaint her fence had climbed. You're spending like neighbors again, she said. And people clapped without being told to. Then came the part I didn't predict. The state knocked on doors. Not our doors, theirs. Investigators in polite suits showed up with polite questions and, later, not so polite warrants. Word spread that Greg had, decided cooperation looked better than clinging to the last rung of a rotten ladder. Ted got a call too. He told the truth he'd already told me. Now, with a recorder on the table, he slept better after. You could tell. One morning, I was sweeping sawdust out of the boathouse, last bits from a shelf I'd built, when Ray appeared in the doorway. Hands in pockets. That careful look he gets when news might bruise. Dad, he said. There's a grand jury looking at the forgery angle. Paper crimes. No promises. But they're taking it seriously. I don't need anyone in cuffs to sleep. I said. I need the line on the map to stay where it belongs. Then I swallowed. And maybe a little bit of justice, so nobody tries this on the next old man. Ray nodded. Eyes going soft around the edges. That I can get behind. The anti-SLAPP hearing hit mid-spring. Courthouse. Bright and humming. Karen didn't speak. Her new lawyer did. Sounding like a radio tuned 2 clicks off the station. He called me a provocateur. If provocation means asking for a certified plat and a normal driveway, then sure, partner. My lawyer stood up with a binder like a choir book and sang the song of facts. Public interest. Receipts. Photos. A judge, who remembered our last visit, looked from one table to the other like a parent who's already heard this story and knows which kid broke the lamp. Ruling came fast, complaint dismissed. And this part made me grin into my collar fees awarded. That meant the folks who tried to scare me silent had to help pay for the privilege of failing. The new board, bless 'em, voted to insulate current homeowners from that tab and let the insurers and the named folks sort it out. Clean hands. Clean house. I didn't crow. I took a long walk around the loop instead. Nodding at porches. Waving at bikes with streamers. Nora's mama called from her stoop. There's peach pie cooling, and suddenly the world tilted toward good again. Summer washed in warm and lazy. The boathouse took on that sunburnt gold of fresh lumber doing its first season. Evan's boy caught a bass and looked like he'd been given a state secret. Aisha organized a kayak safety day and somehow made wear your vest sound like an invitation, not a ticket. Cheryl talked softly to a neighbor who kept his yard a little wild. And they found a compromise, wildflower strip up front. Jungle party in back. Everyone happy, including the bees. We had one near miss. A volunteer inspector, new guy. A little too eager, started cruising with a clipboard. Measuring mailbox heights like it was an Olympic event. I saw him on my road. Eyes narrowed at a wind chime like it had insulted his mother. Old instincts flickered. I felt my jaw hitch. Cheryl beat me to it. She walked up. Gentle smile. Shoulders loose. "Hey there," she said. "You on a mission," he puffed up. "Just ensuring compliance. A little tip," she said. Friendly. "We do fixes before fines. And we don't surprise inspect. Folks get a heads up. And then we help. Put the tape measure away unless someone asked you to bring it." He stood there a second, torn between the sweet rush of authority and the better rush of being useful. Then he tucked the tape away. "Yes, ma'am," he said. And later I saw him hauling branches for an older couple instead. Sweating and smiling. Culture turns on small hinges. Not every story ended pretty. One family, who'd been tight with the old board, moved away in a hurry. Rumors nipped at their heels. I swatted 'em when I heard 'em. "We don't do that," I'd say. "We fix rules, not people's lives." Late July. The lake turned hot as bathwater by midday, then glassy cool at dusk. I took to sitting on the dock at that blue hour, when birds trade songs, and the world goes soft focus. One evening, I found a small package tucked by the boathouse door. Inside a brass plaque. Simple letters. Built together. Lila's handwriting on a note. For the wall that faces the sunset. I drilled it in level. Then, stepped back, and teared up, more than a man with calloused hands is supposed to admit. The fall brought one more ripple. A developer sniffed around the far side of the lake. Not our HOA's land, but close enough to send trouble. Slick brochure. Lots of elevated living talk. Not much about where the runoff goes when you pave dreams. Old me would have muttered at the television. Knew us, held an info night. We invited the county water guy. The roads gal. A bird watcher from 2 towns over who knew what happens when you mess with marsh. We didn't scream no. We asked how until the picture got honest. The developer smiled less as the question stacked. He withdrew his first proposal. Came back with fewer units. Real stormwater plans. And a promise to fund a public trail. Not perfect. Better. And we wrote our comments in full sentences instead of pitchfork memes. Somewhere in there, a postcard landed from an address I didn't recognize. No return name. Just a line, "I'm learning how to be a neighbor." I set it next to the sunset photo. Mercy's a funny thing, it doesn't excuse. It opens a door just wide enough for somebody to walk back through if they choose. Winter again. Snow ticked like static against the windows. The boathouse roof held steady under the white. Inside, I organized tackle and old paint cans and a shelf of wobbly treasures, a smooth skipping stone. A jar of screws. The little birdhouse camera Ray forgot to retrieve that first day. I kept it there on purpose, a reminder that watching isn't the same as being scared. Sometimes, it's being wise. One afternoon, after the new year, I got a call from Miss Alvarez. No longer our receiver. Just a woman who likes tidy endings. "You should know," she said. "The state filed charges in the forgery matter." She paused. "Paper crimes. No headlines with sirens. Just the slow, boring justice that fixes systems." I thanked her, and hung up feeling, what's the word, quietly relieved. Like a floorboard finally nailed down, so it stopped squeaking. We marked the anniversary of the rebuild with a pot of chili and a handful of neighbors trading remember when stories. Somebody asked if I kept the first orange notice. I nodded. "In a folder," I said. "Not on my heart." Dana clinked a spoon on a mug. All right, she said with a grin. 2 takeaways for next time. Life goes sideways. She held up 2 fingers. 1, write it down. Take pictures. Get certified copies. 2, don't fight alone. There's a 3. Ray rumbled, smirking. Ask your brother to color code the timeline. 4. Mark added, holding up a spoon. Bring snacks to any meeting longer than 10 minutes. We laughed. It felt good to laugh without a lump in it. The next morning, I took my coffee to the dock and, out of habit, checked the line where my land meets the world. Still there. Still mine. Not 'cause I shouted the loudest, 'cause we stood long enough. Together. With receipts and with grace. A gust riffled the lake into 1,000 tiny scales. A heron lifted off the point like a slow arrow. The boathouse caught the light, Sarah's light, and threw a stripe of gold across the water. I whispered, "Look at that." To nobody and to her. And the day answered by simply beginning. If you've stuck with me this far, thanks. Maybe you've got your own version of a boathouse. Something small and sacred someone tried to bully out of you. Maybe it ain't a building. Maybe it's your right to plant a bird bath, or fly a flag, or paint your shutters the color of a happy memory. Maybe it's the quiet you paid your whole life to sit in. You're not crazy. You're not alone. And most bullies ain't as strong as they sound once sunlight hits the paperwork. So, what would you do if your HOA tried to rewrite your map with a magic marker? Ever had to fight for your own front porch? Drop your story in the comments, let me know. And we'll read 'em. Maybe someone down the street needs to hear how you stood your ground.